Hi, and welcome to the Long Range Shooting and Custom Rifle Building podcast presented by Wolf Precision Incorporated, where we learn about and share long range shooting and custom rifle building. I am your host, Jamie Dotson, and welcome to the show. Hi, and welcome to episode 70 of Wolf Precision's Long Range Shooting and Custom Rifle Building podcast. I'm your host, Jamie Dotson, and welcome to the show. In this episode, we are going to continue on our Preparing for the Match series. And in this episode, we're going to talk about our pandemic situation with ammunition, on how you can train more effectively and efficiently with what ammunition that you have. And then also some updates for the shooting school for 2021, as well as some new videos that will be coming out soon on our new ACE system. So we're really excited for the show. I think it's a really important one to talk about going into the new year. So without further ado, here we go. All right, before we get started, I would like to say a special thanks to Krieger Barrels. Krieger is a proud sponsor of the podcast here. So if you're interested in a high quality cut rifled barrel, you can stop over to KriegerDirect.com for in-stock barrels that are actually ready to ship. And also a side note, Krieger does post up periodically barrels that are in inventory that either were duplicate runs or extras that they've built that they have readily available, and that is KriegerBarrels.com. So you can stop over to their website, browse all their in-stock inventory, and also go to KriegerDirect.com to see what they have in inventory ready to ship today. And in most cases, if they have an inventory, you can have it in your hands in as little as 2 to 3 business days. So stop over to Krieger Barrels or KriegerDirect.com today. We also want to say thank you to TriggerTech Triggers. TriggerTech's also a proud sponsor of the show to help make the show possible. And we always say if you're going to put a better trigger in your rifle and you would like to shoot better, put the best trigger in there that you can get. And we truly believe that is TriggerTech Triggers. It's what we put in all of our custom rifles here. I think it's a very simple, clean, one screw adjustment for pull weight. So there's no over travel screw to adjust with. There's no sear engagement to adjust with. It is just a really great, simple trigger that breaks awesome and easy to adjust and field worthy. And that's a big one for us, is these triggers have to survive in the field in dirt and debris and work well all the time. So stop over to TriggerTech and pick out your trigger today. So thank you, TriggerTech, for being part of the show. All right, so continuing on our series where we were talking about preparing for the match, and in this one we're going to be talking about how to train well with the ammunition that you have. So it's no secret out there, ammunition and reloading components are in very short supply. We have lots of friends as well as people that have helped us with the shooting schools, some guys that are shooting competitively right now. Almost all of them are in almost a panic mode to try to just find enough components to even shoot some matches this year, let alone have a fair amount of excess ammunition to train with. And so this is probably going to be a problem for a little while yet. I do think, and this is my opinion, it's going to go away soon. You're going to see a lot of the buying and reselling, or people profiteering off of making the crisis worse. That will come to a screeching halt because manufacturing, as far as I understand, is back and is actually running faster and more efficient than ever before. And of course, to them, they're selling products. So if they can sell as much as they can make, they're going to increase production. So eventually it catches back up. We have all been through this cycle before. This is nothing new. It's just been a little bit longer. And I think this pandemic has made the situation a little worse, as well as the election causing a little bit more people to panic buy. A lot of new buyers out there. And so that's compounded the problem. But I do believe, in my honest opinion, that this will pass just like all the others have. But that doesn't help us too much get ready for the new shooting season that's starting here in a couple months. For up us north, our shooting season really starts to kick off in March and April because the weather just doesn't allow us to go out and practice or train as much or in as nice as condition as we would like it. You like to keep your gloves off and feel your fingers while you're pulling the trigger and not have to search for your brass in a pile of snow. Not that I haven't done that. I certainly have, but now I have the choice and I sort of try to wait for a little nicer weather, maybe. That might be a good idea. But the guys down south, They have a great advantage on us. I always say we're in hibernation up here for a couple months. We really can't train and practice as efficiently and effective as we'd like for a couple months over the winter. Where the guys down south, this is their shooting time. I mean, they have great, pleasant weather. They can go out and practice like maniacs. So in the spring, the Southerners usually have an upper leg on us in the training category going into the new shooting season. So that's always nice as well. So how can you train more efficiently and get the most out of what you have? And maybe this should be a great conversation to have on thinking about calibers, caliber selections, and, sort of how to shore up the dam, so to speak, to make sure that you have some stuff in inventory or have some options in inventory that should this happen again, you'll at least be able to weather out the storm a little bit more in a better prepared situation as far as, ammo and rifle and being able to continually practice. What's really cool about this podcast here is this is sort of nothing new. We've addressed this in the past, but not because of the panic buying or the lack of inventory out there, which, by the way, is coming back. We actually bought some primers here recently we were able to get, and so you're starting to see the stores get inventory. One of the problems that we see is what we had in the past where people are using this to buy as much as they can to keep the crisis going and selling things for 3 and 4 and 5 times their value, sort of taking advantage of the situation. That will pass, but I am telling you that we were able to buy primers recently, and now they are sold out and they're gone, but it was a good sign that there is product coming, and, we're able to get through the shooting school this year. I think we're going to be fine. We just have to be careful that we just don't go out and just blaze away constantly every day. But it brings up a good conversation as to how can you train more efficiently and effectively? And this is something that is sort of near and dear to me because this has really changed how I shot, not because of an ammo shortage or the situation we're in now, but simply becoming more in tune to using and getting the most from the time that I am training. So when you're training, you're trying to get as much accomplished as you can in the shortest amount of period as possible. As a shooter, I think you've got a small window or opportunity to train, and then you're just simply applying skills. And then as you keep wearing down, you're trying to apply skills, and you're deteriorating. And eventually, if you just keep shooting for 8-10 hours straight, you're going to start developing bad habits because you're physically and mentally exhausted. So back in about 2010, 2011, I really started changing how I trained, not because of the ammo shortage, but because I really felt personally that I had a small window where I was on my A game, both mentally and physically, to practice and train in before I would mentally and physically start to get tired, and that would sort of start rearing its ugly head in the results that we're seeing. So it caused me to change how I trained, and then after a year or two of it, I realized just how little ammunition I was actually going through in training. And I thought that was a great thing to share with students, especially for those that are shooting bigger calibers that don't want to go to the range and blast away 20, 30 rounds or 50 rounds of a really expensive, boutique caliber, or say, for example, like the 300 Win Mag with custom-made ammunition by a custom reloader. You could spend, $90 a box. 338 Lapua, at one point was over $100 a box. It may be now. So it's hard to go to the range and shoot 2 boxes of that up and walk away feeling good about yourself. I mean, you just spent $200 putting 40 rounds down range. So I thought this was a great opportunity to sort of share with students when, especially coming through the shooting school here, as to how you could train more efficiently and effectively and not have to, beat yourself up with these bigger calibers, but also, ease up on a checkbook a little bit, be more efficient with your money, allowing the training to carry on longer without having to dip into the college fund or vacation funds or other things that are sort of important in priorities in life. So how can we train more effectively? Let's talk about this in two categories. The first part, let's talk about how to train. The second part is thinking about calibers and things that we can do to make this as efficient as possible. So we can train efficiently and use terrible selections that would make it harder for us to get ammunition and even really tighten the belt down more on what we have available. And so I think that sort of plays hand in hand. So you don't want to get into having a high maintenance caliber or a caliber that's hard to find or uses a lot of reloading components to make. And so I think that's another great conversation to have. So let's start with how to train in this environment that we're in, to where really people are just, panicked that they're not going to be able to get enough ammunition to practice this year. We have people that are saying they might not have enough ammunition to make it through the match season. And so that's sort of a little disheartening, and I can certainly see where they're panicking a little bit, like, oh my gosh, here's the sport that I love to do, and something I really enjoy going out and spending time with, friends and peers, and now I'm not going to even have enough to go out and do it. So here's some things that I would suggest to do. When you're training, try to train, if you're training a lot, try to train once a week for an hour and a half on actual shooting. And there's a process that I go through, and then dry firing. So let's talk about dry firing first. You can learn a lot dry firing and practicing, even at the range. So I know a lot of guys that practice barricades this way. I know a lot of guys that will practice fundamentals of marksmanship. They'll work on sling shooting. You don't have to have live ammunition every time you pull the trigger. So you can incorporate some dry firing both at the range while you're preparing to train and at home. So you're in the basement, you're getting your rifle all slung up, put a dot on the opposite wall. Now here, let's talk about safety again. We can't fall asleep at the wheel here. I promise you send a round off in your basement, the police are probably coming. Your wife's going to ban you from ever having a rifle in your house ever again, and your neighbors are never inviting you to Thanksgiving dinner ever again. Like, bad things can happen, let alone people seriously getting hurt or even killed. So rule of thumb is no ammunition anywhere near where you're dry firing. No magazines with rounds in them. You sweep that chamber with your finger to make sure that there's no rounds in the chamber setting, because we have seen this where guys' bolts, they're done shooting for the day, they bump their bolt, they're picking the rifle up, the bolt hits the round that's in the magazine, and it launches it out of the magazine into the chamber. Well, the guy looks down, drops his magazine, thinking there's nothing in there. He didn't close the bolt, but because he tilted the gun down and the bolt slid forward and hit that round, it actually has a live round in it. We have seen this. So don't take it for granted that you just dropped your magazine, that there's nothing in there. Work the bolt a couple times, stick your finger in there, make sure there's nothing in the chamber, right? And for this reason, too, I will tell you that we don't use snap caps. I really don't like to put anything in the gun that represents any type of ammunition at all, ever. And the bad actions, the quality that they're built with, this is not an issue. You're not going to break firing pins. Now, one of the things that can cause you issues with dry firing and breaking firing pins, per se, is if you don't close your bolt the whole way. Keep in mind that you have a cocking piece or a ramp that, as you open or close your bolt, that slides that firing pin back and forth in the battery. So if you're dry firing quickly and you don't bring the bolt the whole way down to the closed position, as the firing pin is falling forward, it's hitting off the side of that ramp and then sliding forward to ignite and send off the primer. So you're putting a lot of stress on the side of the cocking piece because it's slamming into the ramp rather than going straight forward, clear into the ammunition. So make sure when you're dry firing that you're closing the bolt the whole way to the closed position, or else you can and will break firing pins. Just a little side note there. So dry fire at your house. Put a dot on the wall, practice sling, practice barricades, practice transitioning. Getting that muscle memory down of moving that rifle from one side of the barricade to the other, and how to manipulate it efficiently so you're not just grabbing and yanking and throwing your rifle all over the place. I also try to remind guys, we've done advanced classes here before. We don't offer them now because we're too busy on the other ends of the business, but remember that I often say at matches, it's really funny to watch guys who are super fast And it's not because their movements are fast. It's just they're really efficient with their movements. And so if you watch a really good shooter who's good at manipulating the bolt, really good quick follow-up shots, it almost looks like they're in slow motion. They're working the bolt and they're closing it, and it's fast. So the rounds are going bang, bang, bang. I mean, he's cranking it. But if you watch his hands, it's very smooth. It's bang, click, click, bang, click, click, bang, click. So you'll see he's very fluid, but he's not jerking around and having to regroup himself. And so you'll see guys that are really fast and efficient at moving. They actually look like they're sort of moving in slow motion. They're not wasting any movements at all. They're very simply moving from one direction to the other as quickly and as easily and as efficiently as possible with as least stress. And so it's funny. You get a chance to watch guys that are really good at this. You sit there and watch Fascination and say, he's going really fast, but it doesn't look like it. He's there's something not right here with how this is working. And it's just that they're not wasting any movements or excessive movements or repeated movements, and they're just being really smooth. When you're practicing at home, put something on the wall. You can put a barricade up. You can practice shooting off your backpack. Even if you get nothing more than just a couple snaps on the trigger, it's going to keep you pretty sharp. It's going to keep you familiar with how the rifle feels in the shoulder. It's going to keep you familiar with the pistol grip or the grip. It's going to get you really familiar with the trigger and knowing when it's going to break. But then at the range, oh my gosh, I think one of the biggest missed opportunities for a lot of people who are seriously training, competitive shooters, hunters, guys who are really getting prepared to go and accomplish a mission, an elk hunter that's going on a hunt in Colorado or Arizona, a trophy tag of a lifetime. You're training. But boy, what a missed opportunity if you don't train when you get to the range by dry firing a little bit. Like, I'm often fascinated that guys will just throw the rifle down on the ground and close the bolt and start shooting. You're practicing. So you'll introduce these things simply because you're not warmed up yet. And I think warming up as a shooter is really important, especially getting that no bad habit thing going on, right? And so what you'll do when you're cold is you're going to get on the ground and you're going to dry fire on target at 100 yards. Dry fire a couple times. Pick out a bullseye. Watch. It's amazing. Like, your crosshairs will literally jump, and you'll be, oh, what the heck was that? And it's you. It's you're not settled in yet. You're pushing or pulling on a rifle improperly, and it showed up in your crosshairs like that. Had that been a live round, well, that round wouldn't go where it was supposed to. And you would be like, what was that? Why did that go over there? Oh, man, tell me something's wrong with... So you start getting this mental game going on simply because you're not warmed up. So getting out and dry firing, getting your rifle out and setting up, get a round or two, dry fire down there, then get off the gun, wait a minute, get back down on the gun, load it for real, and now this is the money shot. And you would be surprised how you can spend, an hour at the range training and go through very little ammunition, but come away learning a lot about you, how you manipulate the rifle, some bad habits that you still have to break, getting that repetitive motion of getting on the gun, finding the target, pulling the trigger, getting on the gun, finding the target, pulling the trigger. That's what you're trying to train to do. So let me give you a typical range scenario. And when I started training this way, and we're talking, 11 years ago now, it was about trying to train more efficiently, not just going and shooting 100 rounds every day for no reason and not feeling like you're getting any better. So me as a shooter, at that point, I was really feeling like I was plateauing. Like, no matter what I was doing, I was really good, but I wasn't as good as I wanted to be. I still felt there was room for improvement, but I couldn't realize it. I couldn't train past that. It's like that weightlifter that gets stuck at whatever bench press pounds he's at. How do you get past that plateau? It's like the runner that's stuck at this distance that he can't get any faster. How do you get past that plateau? And what I thought to do is, okay, I'm going to start and regroup and rethink about how I train and approach training rather than just shooting more and more and more and more. If you're a runner, running further doesn't make you faster. So when you get to the range, what I like to do first is I'll get down, put my targets up, I'll get all my equipment out, and I train prone. I don't shoot off the benches unless I have to. So sometimes some local ranges I have to shoot off the bench. It's all we're allowed to do. But when I'm training, I actually train prone fundamentals of marksmanship, and then I'll practice positional from there. But I'll go down and put up a target at 100 yards, and it'll just have 6 bullseyes on it. And I'm going to go back and set up on that target. I'm going to get the rifle all situated. I'm going to get the gun set up. I'm going to get in position from the standing position, get on the gun, and I'm going to dry fire on one of the bullseyes. And then I'm going to get off the gun, stretch a little bit, settle back down, get back down on the gun from scratch, from the standing position. Because keep in mind, at a lot of these matches or in hunting scenarios, you're never laying on the gun shooting 4 or 5 shots before you take the money shot. It's usually from the standing position, building your shooting position from scratch. And so why not train that way? Start from the standing position, get on the gun, shoot, and then get back off. So when we're dry firing, do the same thing. Stand up a minute, stretch a couple more times. Maybe do this once, twice, 3 times, whatever. And then you are sort of getting your mindset back, and you're getting it built up to, hey, how everything's supposed to feel, how the grip and into the shoulder and cheek weld, you're getting settled down. And then you're going to get on the gun, and this time it's for real. And you're going to put a shot on one of the bullseyes. And you will be stunned on how more consistent you will be settled in. More importantly is how familiar the rifle is going to be getting on from the standing position, or the cold position is what I like to call it. So you're going to get down on the gun, and all of a sudden you've got this thing where you can do this now like second nature. You get on the gun, pull it up, everything works. And you're going to do this enough that eventually you're going to tell something's wrong, even while you're still preparing to take the shot. Something doesn't feel right. Something's not in the right position. And I think that's where a lot of shooters struggle is they don't practice from the standing position enough, getting on the gun and building that position from scratch. They're not familiar with it because they only do it once or twice, and then they lay down there and they shoot 10, 15, 20 rounds, and then they get off the gun, take a break, get back down one time, and start shooting and training all over again. So I recommend really getting into the position from scratch, shooting, and getting back off. Think about barricades. You don't have to sit there and run the whole barricade like a tank trap. Whatever side you start from, whether it's left or right, start from the standing position, get your gun ready, get on, dry fire, get back off. Go through the whole process again from where you would either start on the left side or right side or whatever, and get back on, shoot, back off. So again, get back, from the standing position, build your position from scratch, get on the barricade, dry fire, get back off. Do that 3 or 4 times. Then put the live round in, or 2 or 3. So then practice. But you don't have to actually shoot every single time, because sometimes just the act of that recoil coming back hides everything that you're doing wrong. You'll be shocked. You're going to get on target at 300 yards shooting off a barricade, you're going to dry fire, and you're going to jerk. Click, and the rifle's going to shake all over the target. Well, one thing about dry firing and training this way is that you recognize that, and you're going to be like, oh my gosh, what was that? That was terrible. If you actually fired that round, what you did would have more than likely to most people have been hidden, and you would have missed for an unknown reason. Food to think about. Same thing with any other position or any other thing you're trying to work. You can start by dry firing a couple times from the standing position or from the start position. So the beep, get down, load, pretend load, shoot, get back up. Okay, think about it again. Start the timer on the beep, get back on the position, dry fire, get off the gun again. You can learn a lot doing this. I go over this in the long range shooting school. I share one of my books from 2012. I pass it around the class because I always keep an accurate round count of how many rounds I fire at the range each day. What you will be stunned to see, there are many days that I was at the range training in the morning where I have fired less than 10 rounds for an hour and a half training session. I am not kidding. There are days in my logbook, and if you come to our shooting school, or maybe I'll do some videos here, I'll share it with you, that I fired 7 rounds, 5 rounds for a half an hour of training. This was 10 years ago. And so I just want to reiterate the fact, or maybe reinforce it, that even though we're in a little bit of an ammo shortage or people are struggling trying to find components, You can still train really effectively with a lot lower round count and stay sharp or get sharper and still have plenty of rounds to get to a couple matches. You don't have to blaze away. We see it at the shooting school and at other events all the time, to where if we don't say something, the rifles will be out and they will start shooting from the first time they get on the gun. I am often shocked, and I watch. So I know it's really cool from our perspective, or from my perspective, to watch and learn. But if I watch a student get on a gun, say we're shooting a set of plates at different distances for a training exercise, right? There's always that one guy that gets on the gun and he dry fires before he starts the training exercise. And I will guarantee it, more often than not, he's going to be the better shooter in the class. It just works out that way. Why? Because he cares about the shot. He's putting that extra effort in to make sure he's settled down. I say it as a hunter, like, if you've got elk standing in the middle of the field at 450 yards in front of you and they're just walking around, there's no rush for the shot, there's no reason to get into panic mode about anything, simply ask the guide, say, hey, you care if I dry fire once before we put the round on him? Good grief, that god's going to get on his knees and worship you like a god. Who does that? You're going to earn so much respect. Now, the guide may say, no, shoot him, or might worry that they're getting ready to run off. In that case, dry firing is probably not a good idea. But if they're just standing there, or if they're setting and bedded, right, you're waiting for them to stand up, what's wrong with putting a dry fire round once or twice on them to get settled in? You'll calm yourself down about the shot, first of all. You'll get it out of your system. We're like, God, that didn't go as bad as I thought it was going to go. And then you're going to dry fire again. And then you'll be like, yeah, I got this. Well, that usually is what happens, and you get it. Yeah, you're settled in, you're ready to go. So when you train, whether it's on barricades, whether it's preparing for a match, big calibers, this is a big one. I've watched guys destroy themselves at ranges. We had some guys, I was at a local range here, and they were getting prepared to head to a hunt in Europe, some sheep or whatever it was in Kazakhstan or wherever they were going. I guess it was a pretty big dollar hunt, the animal they were after. So they had these 6 3/4 pound rifles, and God knows what Magnum. I don't remember, other than I'm watching them shoot thinking, I'm thinking that and a horse probably feels about the same when it kicks you. They were getting pulverized at 100 yards. They were shooting terrible. They weren't clients of mine. They haven't been through the shooting school. And I a lot of times don't say much at the range. I'm there for training and, I'll help guys if they ask, but I certainly don't just walk around and randomly start bossing people around. But they got to the point that the guns were overheated for sure. And they were cooking them is what they were doing. The ammo was super expensive for the custom caliber that it was. And the one guy had asked, he sort of knew who I was, although I don't know if he knew we had a shooting score or not. And he would say, hey, do you care shooting this once or twice for us? Because I can't get it zeroed. And I'm going to give you the answer that I gave him, and maybe I shouldn't have. But I was like, no, I didn't shoot it for him. I didn't want to. It was kicking the living daylights out of him. I was like, I'm sorry. Even if I do zero it for you and take 3 or 4 rounds of absolute punishment to do it for you, there's a really good chance that he wouldn't have been able to repeat it. He was just totally, completely worn out from the recoil. And so I didn't shoot them, not only because I didn't feel like I would do the rifle any justice, but I didn't want to plant in their seed that if there was something wrong with the rifle or, it doesn't work real well. So I sort of said, no, I sort of have to pass. I'm not big on recoil like that. And I don't know if I could really shoot it to what your expectations would be. And I sort of left it go at that, laughing a little. And they sort of laughed around and they said, we'll come back tomorrow and try to put a couple more rounds down. But, oh my gosh, for their scenarios, they were way overgunned for what they were going after. They weren't going to Russia for a giant bear. It was a sheep of some kind. So in a situation like that where you're shooting either a lighter rifle or a rifle that's kicking the living daylights out of you, training the way that I'm talking about here just makes sense. You're going to dry fire a couple times, get used to the gun, and then you're going to say, okay, here it comes. It's going to hurt, but I'm going to have to lay here and shoot and let it come back and hit me the way it wants to. You can't manipulate the shot. You can't hold it down. You can't manipulate it, force it not to hit you. It's going to hurt. You have to be able to, a real great marksman, especially with big calibers, just accept the fact that it's going to come back violently and hard, and it's not going to feel good. And your job is to sit there and let it happen without negatively influencing the shot, because anything that you do to try to prevent that recoil from hitting you as hard negatively influences the shot. You can't help it. So you have to be willing to lay there and just take, it's like that 6-inch punch game, except for now it's Mike Tyson on the other end. How long till you start flinching? Can you get 5-7 rounds down before it's okay, I got to put this gun away and start picking up another rifle? So know your limits, but practice this way with those bigger calibers, and you're going to save a lot of money in ammunition. You'll keep yourself from developing bad habits because you're not going to let the wear and tear get to you to the point where these guys that were getting ready for the sheep hunt did. They shot so much that there was no doubt, mentally and physically, they were destroyed. They were not shooting well at all. And for them to continue shooting that day would have just been a waste of time and money and probably degraded their ability to shoot even more. So before we continue on the second part of this podcast, I do want to give a quick shout out to MDT Chassis. MDT Chassis is also a proud sponsor of the show, and we really certainly appreciate having them here helping us. If you have a factory rifle and you want it to shoot better, sometimes just simply upgrading the chassis that fits you better, that has an adjustable length of pull, an adjustable cheek piece, all of those things really matter. And so if you're going to take the time and effort to do it, get a good one. And we really do like MDT. The Oryx chassis made by MDT costs $395. I think it's one of the best under $500 chassis on the market, period. And then they make a host of others right up to the ACC competition chassis, which I think is fantastic as well. So stop over to mdttac.com. That's mdttac.com today. All right, so continue on to the second part of this series about how to train efficiently and effectively is talking about ammunition. This is a big one. Now, it used to be where I would tell guys all the time, I love 223s for trainers. They're fantastic with a fast twist barrel, 1 in 7.7 or 1 in 7 twist. You can shoot heavy bullets, which means they'll actually beat a 308 to 1,000 yards in drop and drift. Now, not energy, but they'll get there, and we have done it for more than a decade. Make fantastic trainers. They're fun to shoot. If you reload, they sip the powder. So they're not a big caliber that's taking 40, 50, 60 grains of powder. 223 shooting a heavy bullet sometimes is less than 25 grains of powder. And so, for example, you buy an 8-pound jug of Varget, when you can get it or if you can get it, well, that could make 2,200 rounds of 223 ammunition shooting heavies. That's a lot of practicing and training in just one jug of powder. And so you have to take ammunition into consideration, and here's where reloading comes into play. You have a couple options open to you. You do have different powders that you can use in case a powder is not available, like right now Varget's hard to get, but there are other powders on the market. Another great viable alternative is those unsung heroes for training. This would be the 6BR, the 6 bench rest. They now feed really well through bolt action rifles. And again, they're powder sippers. So less than 30 grains of powder, and they'll run efficiently and effectively out to 1,000 yards. They're super accurate. So they'll get there. They'll hit decent as far as energy on target, but they're accurate, they're fun, and they're low recoil. Again, so we're trying to train. And the other thing is the availability of the brass. And so 6BR, 6 Dasher now has factory brass available, a little bit more powder, but still a great training caliber, low recoil, not a lot of powder. Same thing when you get into like the 22 Creed, you're still under 40 grains of powder reloading for it. Some other unsung heroes that I think for trainers would be something like the 222 Remington. Now I'm mentioning some calibers here that aren't, on the top of everybody's radar, but because not everybody shoots them, there's a good chance that there might be brass available. Like 6BR's got a fair amount of followers, and Lipo does a great job of producing a lot of brass. But the 222 Remington, not a lot of people shoot that. That was a bench rest caliber from years ago. So 100 to 500 yards, probably a pretty decent fun gun to train with, So you have some choices as far as calibers go, but what I would do is I would try to have maybe 1 or 2 viable options. I would probably pick stuff that was really easy on the powder. So no, 45 and 50 grains of powder requirements. That way, if you can get an 8-pound jug, you could probably stretch it out all summer long. And 2,200 rounds of training is a lot of training. I mean, let's face it, that's a fair amount of range time. 3 8-pound jugs, and you got 6,000-7,000 rounds of training for the entire year. And so being mindful of what you're buying, and then, of course, the availability of bullets. Like the 223 I'm a big fan of just because everybody makes it. There's everything from 40 grainers to 90 grainers. You've got every major manufacturer probably has 30 variants. And in times like these, yeah, I know they're getting hard to get. Bullets are getting hard to get, but ARs don't shoot 90 grainers, at least not often. And so the heavier bullets might be more available than the lighter bullets. You might even just find some just good old round nose, some old varmint rounds or bullets that, a guy has, 1,000 of, and you just buy them and load them and practice it at 100 yards or 1 to 300 yards, just with fundamentals with, barricades or slinged or, in, smaller targets. We do that here at the school. One way to help increase people's ability to shoot is make the targets harder to hit. If we put big whomping sized targets out there, everybody hits everything. And we find that the smaller we make the targets, the harder people work and the more they concentrate and their hits go up. And boy, their confidence goes through the roof. So we have targets that are as small as 8 inches and 10 inches at 1,000 yards. And they'll hit them. And boy, is that a big boost to the old, wow, that was awesome. I can't believe we can hit that. Well, yeah, you can. So if you don't have the ammunition, so if you get stuck with 40 grain jacketed, lead points or whatever, or soft points or whatever, you can still train with them. Small targets out to 300 yards, have fun. But at least you've got a big variety of bullets out there to choose from. So when things get a little tight or all of a sudden you can't find your favorite bullet, you might have some. The nice part about when you pick your caliber, if you do this properly, is this is sort of going to go away. It might not be a while yet. You might be till summer because people are going to panic by now and hoard, trying to say, okay, well, I'm going to need enough now to get me through a year and a half. So now you're going to see people stocking up on 40, 50 pounds of powder and, 7 and 10,000 bullets because they're a little worried that it's not going to be readily available like it's been in the past. So this might creep along a little longer than normal. But I do think it's going to come back around, and I think it's going to go back to some level of normalcy. What I would recommend to do, though, if you get to that point this summer where, okay, things are loosening up a little bit, buy an extra 2 8-pound jugs of your favorite powder for that cartridge. So, like, for example, the 6.5s that we shoot, 6.5 by 47, we shoot Hodgkin's H4350. There's tons of different powders that work really well for 6.5s, but that's what we shoot. So why not buy a couple extra 8-pounders and throw them in there? The nice part about the calibers that sip the gunpowder, for example, is that you buy an extra 2 8-pound kegs when it comes back around later this summer, and when people go into panic mode again, you've got enough powder in there to load 5,000 rounds to train with all summer long. So you sort of got yourself out of the loop, and you've got a really efficient cartridge to shoot and train with, and you're not going to be in panic mode. You can really stretch that 8 pounds of powder out really far. And then if you start training the way that we're talking about here, it goes even farther because you're not shooting 200 rounds every time you go to the range or 100 rounds every time you go to the range. You're going to train a little bit more efficiently. So rather than spending a half a day there, you're going to go there for an hour, train, try to improve your marksmanship skills, practice on fundamentals, get really familiar with how the rifle works. And, building that relationship with the rifle doesn't require 100 rounds. You might go and shoot 20, 30, 40 rounds and still walk away leaving the range. You fired 40 live rounds, you dry fired 40, 50 times, and you walk away feeling good, like you've made some type of improvement and you're getting better. And you'll start to see those results. So if you start training this way, and I'm going to tell you just from experience, the next 2 years in competition shooting after I started training this way were the best years I ever had. Now, I haven't competed competitively now for probably close to, I've gone to some matches to play, but I haven't trained at that level for a while simply because we're running a business. We had a couple patents we were working on, with the ACE and all of that. So, the last 4 years or so has been, all hands on deck between that and the shooting schools. They've been, 80, 100-hour work weeks. and just not the time to actually properly practice. So that's sort of slowing down in the fact that we've done the hard work now. Now we're running a business and everything's sort of starting to mesh and work together and in a system so I can actually run my business and still participate in some matches and start training and getting out there again. But I will tell you that those couple years through 2011, 2012, and 13, I won and placed in a lot of matches across the country. And I look back and I think that was the least amount of volume shooting that I ever did training-wise, but it was the most efficient that I ever did. And, I always say there's lots of luck in winning some of these matches. And sometimes just you got lucky or somebody shanked one shot and it just puts you that edge up. That is great. And that's why we do it and have some fun with it. But yeah, I look back and say, and even after the first year of starting to train this way, I started to see I was breaking that plateau. I was getting more efficient with the rifle. I was getting more familiar. I was way more comfortable. So even in really awkward positions, I had such a great feel for the stock that it was almost like pulling your pillow up at night to go to bed. I mean, it was just like an old friend. Every time you pulled it up, it was there. It worked. You had confidence. The only thing you had to do was focus on getting that trigger pulled down on that target, and you were going to hit it every time. Your confidence was at that level. And I think that's where that pays off. So I hope this helps a little bit with helping you, give you confidence to go out and train. Some things to think about as you're training. Get out there, get some shooting in. Don't go into panic mode that you can't go out. Just sort of go at it a different way, and you'll still come out a better shooter at the end of the year and probably a little bit easier on the wallet as well, but you don't have to shoot that volume. So I hope this helps a little bit in getting guys out there practicing, training a little bit smarter, getting better, and just improving their overall shooting as a whole. And I think that's what we're all trying to do as shooters and marksmen and people who just love the sport. That's all we're trying to do is just improve ourselves and learn and grow as a shooter. And we throw our hat in the ring competitively with other shooters just as a gauge to see how we're doing, how we're stacking up against the competition. But it's never really about beating anybody. It's about growing as a shooter and learning and growing as a shooter, because really you're just competing against yourself the whole time. And I think that's the really cool part is it's an individual accomplishment. And it's really nice when you start to see all that hard work pay off, and the confidence that you have as a hunter as well as a competitive shooter is just, you can't really buy that. It's really, really precious. And it's a good sense of accomplishment. So I hope this helped out a lot. Stop over to our website if you get a chance. We have some really cool stuff we're working on right now. We have all of our pricing up. We just released our video on installing the ACE, and our written instructions will be up on the website soon. And so we're trying to support the shooters. One thing with the ACE is it really is a piece of art. It's amazing the accomplishments that we, myself and Bruce and all the guys at Bat Machine, that we were able to do with this. I look at the piece sometimes in total amazement, but when you think about a chamber as a now reusable part and something that you can shoot and enjoy a lifetime, it's not a chamber job. That really changes things. And the fact that you can shoot that same chamber over and over and over again on multiple barrels, so much, we believe in it so much that we've warranted it for life. So if you buy the ACE and we put it on the barrel, or you put it on the barrel, you're going to shoot that chamber for the rest of your life. You ever damage it, drop it, whatever, even neglect, you send it back to us, and we either fix it or replace it at no extra charge to you. And boy, the amount of work that went into making it, if you look at one, I've never ceased to amaze the craftsmanship that goes into making one of those ACEs, and just how special they are, how hard they are to make. It was 4 years of really hard research and development to make that as perfect as humanly possible and to hold it at that level. And so I always say thanks to Bruce and all those guys out there for the wonderful work that they do and the time and effort that they make to put together such a great product. And we're just happy that they're our partners with all of this and have believed in the project from the word go. So thanks out to those guys as well. So I hope you all had a great and happy new year. Our goal here with the podcast is we will be releasing one at 4:30 every Thursday. We will announce if we have to miss one for whatever reason. Sometimes we have some shooting schools and other events come up. But our goal is to try to release a new podcast every Thursday at 4:30. And then at Friday at 4:30, we are going to release a new video. So coming up this Friday at 4:30, we'll be releasing some videos. They'll be both on our website, and some videos will be strictly on our YouTube channel at Wolf Precision Inc., where we're going to be reviewing a lot of the different stocks. We're going to be talking about the things that you have to look for when you're building your rifle, things you might have to adjust and correct. We're going to be bringing in a lot of the different components and talking maybe in more detail. And my goal for 2021, this is sort of me giving back to the community and saying thank you for all the wonderful things that the shooting world has done for us, is we're slowly going to start doing our Extraordinary Guide to Accuracy series, in which we are going to go through piece by piece a lot of the things that we teach at the shooting school for no other reason than to help the shooters, to try to get you the most out of your training, to try to get you the best shot that we can get you, sort of our way of giving back. So as the spring and summer moves along and our weather eases up here a little bit, we're going to start posting up a lot of those videos. We suspect that it's going to be somewhere around 200 videos to accomplish everything that we would like to accomplish and share and talk about. So they'll all be marked specifically the Extraordinary Guide to Accuracy series, and then you'll see video 1, 2, 3 as we keep moving along. So we're really excited to share all that with you. Oh, last note too, we love to camp. We are outdoors people. We just like to get outside. But that said, we do plan on doing some extended excursions this year, which we're going to travel across the country a little bit to some of the different matches and events. In 2022, we're going to be putting the shooting school on the road, so we're going to be looking for some remote locations where we could come and speak for a 2 or 3 day class. So we're looking for locations in Texas. We potentially have a location in California right now. We potentially have a location in Cody, Wyoming. And so if you would like to have us come out and teach a long-range shooting school at your range and schedule it, we're going to try to do 10 next year in 2022. Please contact me. It's Jamie at Wolf Precision. My email here is contact@wolfprecision.net. And we could start getting things arranged and see if it would work. But we're going to try to do a couple remote classes in 2022 and travel. We will be doing a Q&A session soon, so send in any questions that you have, and we would be glad to talk about them online, try to answer as many as we can. Next week, we're going to continue on our Preparing for the Match series with another great interview, so looking forward to that. And in the meantime, I'd like to thank everybody for joining us here. My name is Jamie Dotson. I'm your host, and you are listening to the Long Range Shooting and Custom Rifle Building Podcast.